At a modest bus stop in a quiet Japanese town, a young man, resembling an ordinary high school student, carefully studies the bus schedule. He tries to confirm the arrival time of the next bus, methodically scanning the pages. Finally, his gaze lands on the right line, but before he can rejoice, a strange cracking sound catches his attention. The space nearby seems to crack like glass, and the sight fills him first with confusion, then with genuine horror. Panicked, the young man tries to scream, but the darkness rushes forward and completely engulfs him. The confusion doesn't last long. Consciousness gradually returns, and a soft light illuminates his bewildered features. A strange voice forces the young man to raise his head to examine the stranger standing before him. The girl expresses genuine surprise that anyone alive has appeared here at all. She claims that no human has set foot in this place for hundreds of years, much less one so young. Contemplating her appearance, the young man momentarily forgets his fear. At first, he mistakes the stranger for an ordinary girl, but soon notices the spread wings behind her and assumes she's an angel. Fascination gives way to anxiety, and he begins nervously scanning the strange space around him. He wonders where exactly he is. The winged being responds with a friendly expression, claiming to be genuinely pleased to meet Shirasaki Raito. She explains that this place is a space existing between worlds, comparing it to the void between distant stars. It turns out he found himself in a space between his familiar world and an unknown dimension. The angel explains that he was literally thrown out of his native plane of existence, which is why he ended up in this abyss. Raito is having a hard time accepting this new information. The possibility of returning to his reality is out of the question. This thought pierces him, causing a painful shock, as if the ground is shifting beneath his feet. The angel continues to explain what's happening. She notes that the young man was sucked into a rift in space, causing him to fall to the lower level of the interdimensional realm. She identifies herself as the being responsible for managing this zone and redirecting those who accidentally find themselves there to other worlds. This is her job, and she cannot shirk it. Raito desperately tries to stem the flow of her words. He refuses to accept the idea that the path back is completely closed, and his protest is almost instinctive. However, the angel remains adamant. She maintains that there is no way to physically return. The laws of the interdimensional space simply do not allow it. Despite the harshness of the facts, she clearly empathizes with the shocked young man. Claiming that what happened was merely a tragic accident, she suggests viewing the situation as an unfortunate incident. The angel tries to encourage Raito and advises him to show maximum strength and fortitude in the new world. But the young man's gaze fills with dark despair. He feels profoundly helpless because he didn't even have time to say goodbye to any of his family. The very thought of such a sudden break with his past life weighs heavily on him. He wasn't prepared for such a drastic transition. Lost in a chaotic stream of thoughts, Raito briefly loses touch with reality. But then, slowly, a resolve forms within him. If there's no turning back, then he must at least understand what world he'll be sent to. Angel is genuinely surprised at how quickly the young man managed to pull himself together. She gives the simplest possible explanation. The new world can be called a classic science fiction dimension, a kind of alternative universe. Raito doesn't know how to react to this description. Angel perks up and asks a follow-up question. Does he like role-playing games? She describes the new world as a place inhabited by real monsters, dwarves, elves, and other races familiar from fantasy universes. Suddenly, she remembers an important detail. After the transfer, his physical body will undergo a restructuring. This information again triggers a wave of instinctive fear in the young man. Unable to contain his emotions, he cries out in growing anxiety, trying to understand what changes await him. The angel tries to reassure him, assuring him that his personality and memories will remain intact, but his body must adapt to the laws of the new world. Raito feels his consciousness rapidly drifting, and he no longer understands what is happening around him. But the moment of farewell inevitably arrives. The angel invites him to mentally contact her if any questions arise. She explains that she knows everything about the other world, so she can share any information she needs. Mustering the last of his strength, Raito replies that since he has the right to ask anything, he would like to know her name. The winged girl looks slightly surprised. Nevertheless, she willingly reveals her name. They call her Iris, the mistress of the space between worlds, the one who controls the passageways. She asks him not to hesitate to contact her if he has any problems, assuring him that she's usually available and can respond almost immediately. Raito's vision begins to fade. Before he passes out completely, he begs her to keep her promise. Coming to his senses with difficulty, he hears intermittent voices. Judging by the intonation, two people are arguing loudly. The man demands to know what exactly is in front of him. The woman tries to calm him with gentle words, but only receives a sharp shout. Raito tries to open his eyes and discerns the disgruntled face of the man, who claims he was disappointed when he was told it was a boy. His vision clears completely when an enraged stranger rudely calls him trash. The next thing Raito feels is a sharp jolt as the man contemptuously tosses him aside. As he falls, Raito notices that his body has become abnormally small, as if it had shrunk to half its original size. The terrified girl manages to catch him before he hits the ground. Only then does the young man realize with horror the true cause of what's happening. It's not an illusion or altered perception, his own body has transformed into that of a baby. The girl, clutching him in her arms, tearfully reproaches the man standing next to him, as if demanding to know how he could treat his own child so mercilessly. However, the man, apparently his new father, shows no remorse. He coldly refuses to acknowledge the infant as his son and declares his faith in the woman before him in vain, claiming she is unworthy of trust. He orders her to disappear immediately, along with the cursed child. The girl weeps, but is forced to comply. She bids her last farewell to her baby's father, acknowledging her sincere love for him. But the man, remaining cruel and distant, cuts her off, driving them both away. Sometime later, they find themselves aboard an airship, slowly floating through the air. The girl, clutching Raito to her, asks the accompanying knights where they are being sent. They merely exchange glances and bow their heads in acknowledgement, indicating they are not authorized to answer and are unaware of the details themselves. The girl can only mournfully reason with herself, trying to understand the reason for what happened. According to her, the man, who turned out to be the king, declared their son unfit to be heir to the throne. Moreover, he declared that this child didn't even exist for the royal dynasty. These words caused the girl to burst into tears again, unable to understand how he could do this to their son. And finally, Raito realizes, this girl is his new mother. He watches her suffering with dismay. To get his mother's attention, he reaches out to her, making faint baby sounds. This unexpected movement jolts the girl out of her dark thoughts. Her sobs gradually subside. She hugs the baby tighter, whispering a plea for forgiveness and promising a calm and safe life ahead. She urges her son to relax and try to sleep. On board the airship, Raito, now a baby, desperately tries to make sense of the chaos. After some time, he awakens again. His new mother immediately notices the baby's slight movement. She announces that they are almost at their new refuge. Raito, barely accustomed to being a baby, tries to turn his head and take in the surroundings. The girl, meanwhile, watches the scene tensely. A huge mansion with wide gates looms before them, and numerous servants line the entrance. The butler greets the girl with a bow and announces that they have long awaited her arrival. She cautiously inquires about the origins of these people, as their attention seems suspicious to her. Meanwhile, Raito is struck by the size of the building and the number of servants. Everything looks far too luxurious for those who were just exiled. The butler explains that all these people are servants, charged by the king with overseeing the mansion and its residents. They assure the girl of their complete devotion and promise to serve her as their new mistress for as long as necessary. The girl doesn't hide her surprise, wondering if the king actually showed even a spark of love for the child. But the butler simply admits he doesn't know the truth. He explains that their duty is to care for the children within their walls, so she has nothing to worry about. No one here intends to harm her son. She remains wary, but accepts the butler's words. And Raito tries to understand the meaning of the phrase about children like him. What could it possibly mean? The butler invites them inside, claiming that a room for the child has already been prepared. As they move down the hallway, Raito gradually drifts off to sleep. Soon, he opens his eyes in a new room, where his mother stands by the window, holding him in her arms. Seeing that her son is awake, she greets him softly, calling him by name.
As if testing whether the baby likes his name, Raito's satisfied sound is her response. He is glad that they have kept the same name he had in his previous world. The girl kisses him on the forehead and tells him that a peaceful life awaits them now. Then she carefully lays the child down on soft pillows and informs him that it is time to prepare food, so he should wait a little. When his mother leaves, Raito is left alone with his thoughts. He believes the transition between dimensions has been without serious consequences. However, he realizes he knows too little about the world he finds himself in, and he still has a lot to figure out on his own. At that moment, he remembers Iris's words about being able to call upon her mentally at any time. So he closes his eyes and tries to call upon the angel mentally, hoping she will hear. The answer comes instantly, almost frighteningly quickly. Iris appears in his mind, her voice confident and clear. Unfazed by Raito's surprise, she immediately begins speaking, noting that his birth in the new world was extremely successful, and that he now fully resembles a human infant. Raito tries to figure out the source of her voice, but Iris laughs at his confusion. She explains that they are currently in a special communication mode. Time seems to be frozen, so their conversation can continue indefinitely without any consequences in the real world. Then Raito realizes that this is precisely why his body doesn't obey his thoughts. He tries to figure out where he is now. Iris calmly replies that he was born in the human kingdom, and the mansion in which he now lies is located on its territory. She informs him that he was born into a royal family. This statement strikes a chord with him, as he instantly recalls the grim, embittered face of the man who so hated him at birth. Iris confirms his guess and explains that Raito has indeed found himself in difficult circumstances. His father, the king, rejected him and banished him from the castle. The frightened infant tries to formulate a question about his future and destiny, hoping for some kind of prognosis. But Iris admits she doesn't know the answer. This infuriates Raito, as the angel had previously claimed to know everything about this world. She explains that she should have clarified, she knows everything about the world itself, but it came from another dimension, so its future is beyond her power of foresight. Raito remains dissatisfied, but understands the logic behind her words. No living mind can see the future. However, something else worries him: why he can so easily understand the speech of the people of this world. Iris explains that this is the result of a built-in skill called translation. She then advises him to mentally utter the command status. Raito complies, and a menu reminiscent of a game interface appears before his mind's eye. Iris explains that this is a status spell possessed by every person in this world. It can be used to check the condition of one's body, skills, and other parameters. Raito is overwhelmed with delight. He's seeing genuine magic for the first time. Iris, meanwhile, is satisfied that his status is flawless, signifying a successful reincarnation. In the name field, Raito sees the inscription, Raito Barutaros. His primary profession is listed as support mage, and his secondary one is listed as alchemist. His status is listed as completely normal. His only specialized skill is translation, which allows him to understand any spoken or written language without difficulty. However, he lacks any combat, unique, or active abilities. Raito concludes that it is thanks to this skill that he is able to understand the words of his mother and those around him. Iris confirms this idea, adding that he is incredibly lucky to have received such a gift, which frees him from the need to learn languages manually. But then the angel focuses on another point: Raito's profession. It's as if she notices something important that the infant himself doesn't yet understand. He doesn't know what the term profession means in this world or why it might be significant. Iris pauses, clearly searching for the right words, before continuing her explanation. She reminds him that immediately after his birth, people began calling him a cursed child. She thinks he's probably now eager to know the reason for this ominous nickname. Raito tries to find out if the angel knows the reason, and judging by her calm, she certainly does. Iris reveals the truth: he was exiled from the palace solely because of his profession. Raito questions whether this is because he is a support mage and an alchemist. Angel agrees, adding that before explaining the details, it's necessary to explain the general principles of the world so that the child understands the scale of the problem. She explains that Raito was born in the kingdom of Barutaros, ruled by his father, King Barutaros XIII. The previous ruler was the current king's brother Raito's uncle. However, he died of a serious illness, and the throne passed to a new monarch. The previous king left behind 3 daughters. Since the queen died before him, the current king adopted them and raised them as his own. Raito was surprised by the fact that both the king and the kingdom itself share the same name. Iris explains that by state law, heirs to the royal line must bear the name Baratoros. It's a symbol of the lineage and the throne itself. She adds that this name is more than just a formality. Anyone who bears it is considered a direct successor and potential representative of the crown. However, there is a strict law: only a man can rule the kingdom. If the king does not have a son, the dynasty will cease to exist. So Raito's birth brought the king immense joy. For a moment, the monarch felt truly chosen by fate. But the happiness proved short-lived, as the child's profession became the cause of disaster. Raito tries to understand what is so terrible about his profession: the danger, the instability, or something else entirely? The answer turns out to be quite different. The problem is that the profession is too weak. This stuns Raito, who never imagined that weakness could be so critical in this world. Iris explains that developing his profession is incredibly difficult. No one in history has ever been able to fully master it. The skill growth rate is negligible compared to other professions, and most importantly, neither a support mage nor an alchemist possesses the ability to fight independently. This means Raito simply won't be able to defeat even a weak monster on his own. Even if he joins an adventurer group, he won't gain experience. Angel looks sad, knowing how hard his life will be. Nevertheless, she tries to instill hope in him. She says that if he works hard every day, he might one day become a full-fledged combat unit and participate in battles. But the problem is different: no one has yet managed to develop this profession to a suitable level. Therefore, such people are dismissively referred to as professional-less. Raito cannot believe that such a trivial matter could lead to the exile of the heir to the throne. He finds the king's actions too cruel and illogical. Iris explains that the importance of a profession in this world is enormous. People without a profession are not considered full members of society. They are despised, humiliated, and rejected. If such a person ascended the throne, the people would take it as an insult. The mob would revolt, and the kingdom would descend into chaos. Iris believes the king acted this way to save the country from destruction. She feels genuine pity for Raito, but she points out that such infants are usually simply killed immediately after birth. Compared to this, exile is almost a mercy. Raito is shocked and devastated, as his new life seems cruel and joyless. But after a moment, he gathers his remaining strength and admits that it would be useful to know the reason for his own father's hatred. He decides not to dwell on the past and to focus on what awaits him ahead. Iris is pleased to see the beginnings of inner strength in him. Raito tries to understand whether a person without a profession can survive without thinking about the future. The answer is obvious: no. So he asks the angel what he should do next if he wants to survive. The angel enthusiastically replies mentally that she was waiting for him to be ready to move forward. She suggests working together, as survival in this world is only possible with strength, skill, and perseverance. Raito doubts he's capable of becoming strong, but Iris insists it all depends solely on his own will. She promises to advise and guide him, meaning he can rely on her. These words evoke a quiet gratitude in him. After discussing global issues, he switches to more mundane matters. He's still a baby and wonders how everyday matters like feeding and toileting will be handled. Iris answers calmly and confidently, his mother or a specially appointed nanny will handle that. She reminds him that he's currently a child, meaning he's incapable of taking care of himself. This revelation strikes Raito far more deeply than all the talk of professions, exile, and the future world. It's precisely the limitations of everyday life that make him acutely aware of his new reality. Raito protests in confused despair, feeling profound discomfort at what's happening. Although he's in the body of an infant, inside he's still a 15-year-old who can't come to terms with his role as a helpless child. The thought of being considered a real baby almost sends him into a state of panic. He feels humiliated at the mere thought of someone else taking care of his daily needs. It seems so shameful to him that he almost breaks into tears.
Iris, observing this reaction, tries to console him, reminding him that he is not an ordinary baby and will not remain this way for long. According to her, he will only have to endure this for about a year before his body becomes stronger. The young man can barely contain his inner turmoil, he's so embarrassed. The angel herself is embarrassed, but compares his state to that of a brave warrior captured by orcs, hinting that shame can always be overcome. She tries to cheer Raito up, urging him to view his rebirth as a rare stroke of luck and an opportunity to start a new life. After these words, she ends the conversation. Left alone, Raito finally breaks down and cries, completely devastated by the thought of someone changing his diapers. For him, this isn't just awkwardness, it's a weakness he finds hard to accept. A moment later, the frozen time ends, and familiar sensations return.
Raito tries to stop his infantile tantrum when he notices his mother enter the room.
She picks her son up, as it's feeding time. The baby, confused, realizes the significance of her actions, and confusion fills his thoughts once again. When he realizes he's being breastfed, he's overcome with a new wave of terror. His mother, unsuspecting, is delighted by his fussy movements, perceiving them as a sign of hunger. For Raito, this comes as a further blow. He's terrified to imagine what awaits him as an infant. Time passes, and life in the secluded mansion goes on as usual. 2 years have passed since then, and Raito, who has now learned to stand firmly on his own 2 feet, rushes around the rooms, causing as much trouble as any active child should, something even the nimble servants can't handle. To master walking and strengthen his body, Raito turned his daily strolls around the estate into a mini exploration. One such day, he notices a closed door that seems suspiciously interesting. However, before he can peer inside, a nimble maid intercepts him at the threshold. She informs him that this is the library's storage room, and the little gentleman has no business here. Little Raito is floundering in her arms, and the elf's name is Alia.
He tries to plead for his freedom, but Alia remains adamant.
She says Raito can't read yet, so there's no point in him being there. She carries him back to the nursery, where he protests but is forced to obey. The maid asks him to behave and stay in his room, but when she looks up, she discovers a shocking mess.
The room is in chaos, toys and clothes are scattered everywhere.
Alia sighs heavily, frustrated by the recurring situation, but Raito, not even thinking about a coherent apology, tries to escape, taking advantage of the confusion.
Unfortunately, the elf immediately catches him and forbids such attempts.
Then Raito agrees to obey on one condition: he asks Alia to teach him magic. It seems this conversation is not the first time. Alia firmly replies that it is too early for the young master to engage in such things. She explains that she has virtually no power, as her abilities are limited to support magic.
But Raito asks to demonstrate at least the simplest technique.
Despite his insistence, Alia firmly refuses and switches to cleaning. Raito pouts, offended, causing her an unexpected wave of affection. She jokingly calls him a little pig, to which Raito angrily mutters that she's being mean, but nevertheless begins to clean up the toys. Alia defends herself by saying she's not evil at all, she simply considers magic too dangerous to use carelessly. Raito sadly agrees, admitting that he, too, understands the hidden dangers of magic. However, an unexpected thought flashes through his mind. He calls out to Alia again, but this time there's a note of caution in her voice. She senses the child is up to something. She turns around and is surprised to see no child nearby. At that very moment, small hands appear behind her, reaching for her back. Raito, beaming with laughter, hugs the stunned maid. An unprepared Alia screams in fear, completely baffled by how the child could have sneaked up so unnoticed. He didn't even think about hiding for long. The little prankster was right behind her this whole time. Raito even feigns surprise that she didn't notice him. Alia is at a loss. She can't deny the obvious, she really didn't sense his presence. The little one apologizes for the prank, explaining he was just trying to have a little fun. But the elf barely hears him. She's too immersed in her thoughts about what just happened. Even if she's distracted, the complete absence of his presence seems strange and frightening to her. Soon she leaves, leaving Raito alone to collect his thoughts. Raito sits down on the bed, closes his eyes, and calls out to Iris again in his mind. Angel responds immediately, as if she'd been there the whole time. She notes that she thinks his portrayal of a child is rather mediocre, but is pleased by how genuinely he laughed while playing Aaliyah.
Iris explains that Raito used his stealth skill as a prank.
This skill dramatically reduces the perception of his presence, allowing him to almost completely disappear into the surrounding space.
The young man confirms he did it intentionally and admits that the prank brought him great amusement. Despite the hilarious episode, Raito remembers why he ended up here.
His weak profession led to his exile from the capital, and so he and his mother, Isla, were forced to settle in this secluded estate. He still has no idea what awaits him in the future. However, now that he has experience of living in a new world, albeit in a child's body, he is taking the first steps toward understanding it. Over the past 2 years, Raito has managed to awaken several useful skills naturally, thanks to Iris's constant advice and guidance. His status now includes Observer, which expands the limits of perception, Endurance, which strengthens his physical stamina, Falling Art, which reduces damage from blows, Night Vision, which allows him to see in the dark, and Stealth, which allows him to almost completely suppress his own presence. Iris reminds him that these skills are essential for survival in a harsh world where people, monsters, and magic coexist at every turn. She suggests continuing to develop new skills, but Raito wearily steers the conversation away. He's weary of being confined to the mansion's walls, he's forbidden from leaving, and the grounds are surrounded by a high iron fence, as if it were under guard. The place begins to seem like a veritable prison to him. And Iris confirms his suspicions, explaining that, even when it was built, this complex was intended to isolate those who needed to be kept away from prying eyes. Raito then wonders if he could climb the fence and escape into the forest. But the angel abruptly cuts him off. She emphasizes that the forest is teeming with dangerous monsters, and it is one of the most unsafe places in the area. Iris adds that, given his current strength, going into the forest is tantamount to suicide. Hearing this, Raito shudders. He doesn't understand why such a dangerous environment surrounds a mansion where a child of royal blood lives. The angel replies that it's the other way around, this mansion is the most secure space. Here, Raito and his mother are protected from potential attacks by humans, who pose a far greater threat than wild creatures. Monsters can be kept at bay, but human hostility is unpredictable. Accepting the explanation, Raito agrees that he can't go into the forest yet. To distract the child from boredom, Iris suggests focusing on learning new skills, as this is the safest and most beneficial activity for him right now. She reminds him that even despite the profession restrictions, the number of skills he can awaken is virtually unlimited. Therefore, she strongly encourages him to continue training and try to discover new abilities. They agree to continue working together until he gains enough strength to defend himself. Inspired by the prospect, Raito enthusiastically agrees. Another 2 years pass. Now Raito is 4 years old. On the roof of the mansion, a hidden hatch trembles, and a little boy emerges from it. He's amazed to have climbed so far up, as if he'd discovered a new secret route. It turns out he's found a hidden passage behind a heavy cabinet. There are many such hidden places in the estate. Raito, reaching the top of the building, surveys the surroundings and sees that the mansion is completely surrounded by dense forest. A rueful curiosity grips him, wondering when he'll finally be able to leave this place. He turns to Iris, informing her that the estate is riddled with secret passages. Angel confirms, explaining that the rooftop is one of the escape routes provided in case of emergency. She then inquires about the progress of his skill learning. Raito proudly explains that he awakened precision and farsightedness the day before. He then shares his plan. Since he's awakened so many skills, he's decided it's time to try magic. But Iris vehemently objects, claiming that a 4-year-old's body isn't capable of withstanding the strain of magic. Nevertheless, he continues to resist, insisting that nothing terrible will happen if the angel at least begins to teach him the basics. But Iris is adamant. Even with the number of skills awakened, his physical and magical potential is still insufficient. She explains that someone with such a weak profession needs to awaken many more skills before moving on to using magic. These skills will form the foundation, without which any magical action will be dangerous. Dissatisfied but understanding, Raito agrees to end the conversation and sighs sadly, once again realizing that magic is not yet available. At that moment, a sharp headache hits him.
Long conversations with Iris are weighing on his mind. And just then, someone notices the baby. At that moment, a sharp headache hits him. Long conversations with Iris are weighing on his mind. And just then, someone notices the baby. Aaliyah drops the watering can she was holding to water the plants. She reaches out to the child, calling to the wind spirit, desperately trying to reach her before the baby hits the ground. A current of air catches Raito, holding him aloft and saving him from certain death. The boy is delighted and shocked, seeing a living manifestation of magic right in front of him for the first time. Aaliyah runs over to make sure he's safe and sound. She raises her hands, wanting to take the baby, but Raito accidentally kicks her in the face. The movement is involuntary from fear and a sharp gust of wind. After this, it's time for a well-deserved scolding. Aaliyah, shaking with fear, screams at him, pointing out that if she hadn't been there, the boy would have died. She reminds him that he's still a small child and shouldn't risk his life. The maid almost cries, saying that if anything happens to him, both she and Lady Isla will be heartbroken. Raito, blushing with guilt, tries to apologize as best he can. Aaliyah exhaled heavily, gradually calming down. Seeing the child trembling with a mixture of shame and fear, she replaced her anger with concern and gently consoled the young master. Since he realized his mistake, everything was fine. She asked if he could get up, but Raito fell to his knees, his legs numb from the long punishment of sitting. It was then that his gaze caught a nearby flower bed. He notices one of the plants and asks the maid its name. Aaliyah is genuinely pleased by the change in conversation and the young master's interest in flora. But she explains that these aren't flowers, but medicinal herbs. Raito doesn't immediately grasp the difference. Aaliyah explains that herbs are ingredients for creating potions, and there are many varieties. However, growing them is difficult. It requires knowledge, special conditions, and herbalism skill. Raito, amazed, wonders if Aaliyah really has such skill. It turns out it's simple. As an elf, she possesses an innate knowledge of plants and understands the intricacies of caring for them. This garden is her responsibility, and she keeps it in perfect condition. Hearing this, Raito is inspired by a new idea. He wants to master herb cultivation and asks Aaliyah to become his teacher. The maid hesitates, believing such work is meant for servants, not a child. But Raito displays unexpected persistence, and Aaliyah can't bear it any longer. She agrees on one condition, that the young master stop his persistent requests to demonstrate magic. Raito agrees instantly, having already witnessed one manifestation of magic, and that's enough for him. Aaliyah is surprised by his easy response, but the child is already completely focused on the benefits of herbal cultivation skills. Another year passes, and Raito turns 5. On this day, the servants gather before him, and the butler, with dignity, proclaims his congratulations. In a solemn atmosphere, Raito sits next to his mother at the festive table. Refreshments are laid out before them, and the maids and servants greet him warmly, expressing their respect. The boy thanks everyone who has come, genuinely delighted by the attention. Many hands reach out to him with small gifts. Some have brought sweets, others toys, still others useful trifles. Raito barely has time to thank them all in turn. He smiles broadly, thinking about how well the people in this house treat him. And he's especially surprised that even knowing his origins, no one shows any hostility toward him. The boy feels obligated to be grateful for such kindness. At that moment, Aaliyah approaches him separately to congratulate him personally. She hands him a small box, which she holds with particular care. Inside is a tiny vial of clear liquid. Intrigued, Raito discovers it's a healing potion, brewed by Aaliyah from the very herbs they grew together. He's shocked. The gift turns out to be not only sweet, but also the fruit of their collaboration. After that, it's Isla's turn to congratulate. The mother, with a serious expression on her face, hands her son a small box, clearly attaching special significance to this moment. She explains that it's too early for him to open its contents. She originally intended to give it to him when he was an adult, but decided to do it sooner. However, looking inside is forbidden for now. That's her strict plan. She'll keep the key until Raito grows up. All he has to do is keep the gift and treat it carefully. The boy agrees, sensing the unusually tense atmosphere. Isla looks surprisingly serious.
He remembers that in this world, a person is considered an adult at 15, meaning he won't be able to open the box for another 10 years. He carefully places the gift and the vial of potion in his small case, wondering what he might ask Iris about the box's contents, but decides to hold off for now. The days go by. Raito continues to work in his and Aaliyah's garden and has managed to grow a multitude of herbs. One day, the elf comes to distract him, carrying a picnic basket. She suggests they take a short break and rest. A table is set in the gazebo, teapot, pie, sweets, everything looks homey. Aaliyah marvels at the boy's tenacity, as he tirelessly tends to the herbs every day. Raito replies that he does it because he truly enjoys the process of growing them. He dreams of growing dozens more varieties of plants, which evokes a certain admiration in the maid. She offers to reward the young gentleman for his efforts and encourages him to learn the elven game she adored as a child. Raito is intrigued, the new game sounds enticing, and asks to learn the rules. Aaliyah begins to explain, victory is achieved if he can stay within the triangle drawn on the ground.
Going beyond the boundaries is a fundamental requirement of the game.
At the same time, Aaliyah intends to create obstacles and push him beyond the triangle. She is not allowed to touch him, nor use any objects. However, she can use magic, and that's where the game's difficulty lies. She barely finishes her explanation when a strong gust of wind knocks Raito off his feet. He falls to the ground before he can even begin to fight back, instantly defeated. Aaliyah approaches him with a beaming smile and extends her hand to help him up.
She's clearly enjoying the game.
She declares that the young master has lost and asks for his impressions. Raito is displeased, believing he has no chance against magic. He angrily calls her a child for her behavior, but the elf, embarrassed, defends herself by saying she was playing as gently as possible.
She then dusts off the indignant boy.
A sudden thought flashes through Raito's mind. He stands inside the triangle again, adopting the same position as before, and invites Aaliyah to repeat the game.
The elf is surprised by his persistence, but doesn't object.
Raito decides to turn a simple children's prank into a real exercise in strength and reflexes.
The result is predictable, another defeat. Then another. And another.
He falls again and again, barely managing to get to his feet, each time being blown out of the triangle by the magical wind. Dirty and tired, but not giving up, he continues to ask for another round.
Aaliyah is frightened by such obsession.
She regrets ever suggesting this game and begs him to stop, apologizing for his first use of magic that was too strong. But Raito politely begs him to try again, just one last time.
The elf reluctantly relents.
She summons another gust of wind, directing it toward the child. This time, Raito remains in place.
He tenses his arms, blocking the airflow.
Gradually, he notices a pattern. After the first push, the wind's force weakens slightly, allowing him to redirect the flow. Aaliyah is amazed by the boy's resilience and decides to test the limits of his tenacity by increasing the wind pressure.
Yet, despite the increasing force of the elements, Raito holds his ground and achieves his desired result.
At this moment, his status awakens the combat skill of circular block, the ability to reflect external impact, distributing the blow along a circular trajectory. Inspired, Raito extends his hands forward, concentrating. He activates the new skill and, as if making a circular motion, redirects the flow of wind back. The air wave turns and flies towards Aaliyah.
Raito is shocked and happy that the ability worked.
But the maid is completely confused. She doesn't understand what just happened or how the child managed to repel her magic. Raito innocently explains that he was simply testing his ability to awaken the circular block.
The boy's words stun Aaliyah even more.
Such skills are usually born in fighters, not in those with weaker professions.
This makes Raito anxiously wonder if he did the right thing.
Aaliyah, overcome with conflicting emotions, reacts abruptly. She's almost angered by the fact that a young gentleman with a worthless profession can awaken combat skills.
The joy vanishes from Raito's face.
The elf immediately realizes her mistake and bursts into apologies, hugging the child tearfully. But the words had already managed to hurt the boy. He only feigned calm, assuring Aaliyah that everything was fine and asking her to calm her emotions, otherwise her clothes would also be stained by the dirt he was covered in from head to toe.
Aaliyah continues to cry, apologizing over and over again. Raito understands that the maid didn't mean to insult him. He knows she treats him sincerely, not because of his background. And yet, sadness lingers. After all, changing his situation is nearly impossible. Even Aaliyah's consolations don't help distract him from this latest reminder of his status. Night falls on the mansion. Lying in bed, he can't sleep for a long time, replaying what happened. He shares with Iris his suspicion that Aaliyah was only kind to him because he was the king's son. Angel responds calmly, "It's cruel, but logical, because if Raito loses his position, no one can guarantee even his mother's safety." He seemed to be crying, though he didn't notice it. Iris tried to console him, insisting that no matter what happened, she would remain his ally. Realizing this, Raito closed his eyes and tried to sleep, though his heart was still clenched with anxiety. But his thoughts won't leave him. He recalls again Aaliyah's sincere reaction, a glimmer of envy, anxiety, and confusion breaking through the friendliness. Sighing, he tries to let go of his worries, but it's hard. He's sitting on the floor next to the bed when he calls Iris again. Angel appears immediately and says she's willing to offer advice, if Raito himself is willing to continue the conversation. The boy admits his mind is elsewhere. He smiles wryly, admitting he must become stronger as quickly as possible. Iris supports this decision and suggests moving on to the next stage of development. Raito's enthusiasm returns, and he guesses that this involves magic. But his expectations are dashed. Judging by the angel's words, Raito is still too weak to use magic. However, he has another path to development, mastering the skills associated with the profession of alchemy. Raito clarifies what skill she means. Iris explains that she intends to teach him the basics of alchemy, starting with the fundamental skill of transforming materials. This is the ability to transform one metal into another. Then comes shapeshifting, a skill that allows objects to be given any structure. And finally, material reinforcement, the art of increasing the hardness, strength, and durability of objects. These three areas will form the basis of his future development. Now Raito faces the challenge of mastering all three alchemical skills Iris mentioned. He understands that these will form the foundation of his path as a support mage and alchemist. He's surprised by the requirement to learn three different skills at once. But Iris assures him it's not as difficult as it might seem. She's convinced the young alchemist can master them by the end of the day if he concentrates. Luckily, there are metal cutlery in the room, a knife and fork. They're perfect for his first practice. Raito is delighted by this, as practicing alchemy in public is not allowed. It would attract too much attention. At the same time, he bitterly realizes that he can't even look Aaliyah in the eye yet. He's ashamed of her reaction, and decides to distract himself with the task at hand. He gathers all his willpower and begins with the material transformation skill. Raito picks up a butter knife and focuses on transforming it. He tries to mentally imbue the metal with new properties, strength and sharpness. After some effort, he doubts it's worked and examines the knife almost with disbelief. His gaze falls on a wooden bear figurine on the table. He decides to test the result and throws a knife at the toy. The blade effortlessly pierces the bear. Stunned by his success, Raito picks up the fallen figurine. Only now does he realize that he must have accidentally activated his shapeshifting skill, transforming the dull butter knife into a fully fledged, sharp blade. The system notification announcing two learned skills at once almost makes him jump. He truly mastered material transformation and shapeshifting instantly. But now he needs to return the knife to its original state before moving on. Now it's the fork's turn. Raito sets his sights on making it incredibly hard. He concentrates and uses his material strengthening skill, expecting to see the results. For the test, he once again needs the knife, which he has now restored to its original shape. He swings it and hits the fork with all his might. A loud metallic clang fills the room. The knife instantly deforms, while the fork remains perfectly intact even though both utensils are made of the same metal. The contrast is striking. Now he understands the power of amplification. A new notification window appears. The third alchemical skill has been successfully learned.
In a burst of joy, Raito involuntarily calls Iris by an affectionate nickname, and the angel instantly responds. He's surprised. It turns out she's already so accustomed to his mental voice that she responds to any request. He happily admits that the skills of his profession are incredibly easy to master. Iris, almost jokingly, agrees, calling it the secret of the world. But an embarrassed Raito asks her not to exaggerate. However, he can't imagine such a flexible power being considered useless. He asks why others treat alchemy with such disdain. The angel explains that alchemical transformations are truly unique, but their effects are temporary. Any object transformed by an alchemist returns to its natural state after a certain period of time. She warns that Raito's limit is about a minute, which causes the boy an almost physical pain of disappointment. Iris clarifies, in this world, steel is the hardest material humans can create. And his limit is working with levels close to steel. Then she specifically emphasizes that she's speaking exclusively about the people of this world. At that moment, Raito begins to guess where she's heading. In the world he lived in before, there were many materials stronger than steel, titanium alloys, super-strong composites, carbon structures. He knows about them and can imagine their properties. And if alchemy allows him to shape materials according to desired characteristics, then he can create simulacrums of distant earthly metals. This discovery seems momentous to him. But Iris immediately dampened his enthusiasm. In this world, magical metals exist that are immeasurably superior to steel in strength and properties. Therefore, earthly equivalents, no matter how outstanding, can be inferior. Furthermore, alchemy relies on magical energy, and its quantity is directly related to the body's physical capabilities. Alchemists are physically weak and, even with a powerful sword in hand, cannot wield it effectively. Frustrated, Raito asks how limited the other two skills are, shape-shifting and material enhancement. Iris thoughtfully suggests he open the status window. There, after learning alchemy skills, a mastery section has appeared. Conversion stats are already at maximum, and the other two skills are at level 1. Mastery reflects the depth of a skill's mastery, increasing its effectiveness and bringing it closer to the alchemist's true power. Mastery, displayed next to special skills, is essentially like a level, an indicator of how many times a person has used the skill and how deeply they have mastered it. The more often a skill is used, the higher its numerical value, reflecting the experience accumulated through training. The maximum efficiency rating is 5. When a skill reaches this level, the body begins to respond almost instinctively, adapting more easily to the load and form of execution. Iris recommends Raito begin by mastering the shape-shifting skill. If it's raised high enough, the skill can affect not only metal but other materials as well. Only now does Raito notice that his material transformation mastery has already reached level 5, the maximum. Iris explains that such rapid progress was made possible by using knowledge from his home world. However, Raito is unimpressed. He doesn't yet see any practical value in this skill. Therefore, he decides to begin training immediately, and the angel encourages him to put forth his best efforts. She also reminds him of the metronome from his past world, advising him to use its image for training. Raito immediately understands what device is being referred to, the wooden metronome from the music room, which kept time. Iris explains that she should mentally imagine the metronome's vibrations and try to make the knife move in the same way, smoothly, precisely, and rhythmically, from left to right. Once he gets the hang of it, he can try moving the knife faster and more precisely. The angel's confident advice inspires the boy. He closes his eyes, concentrating on imagining the metal following the rhythm he creates in his mind. However, instead of the expected movement, the knife suddenly becomes sharper. Raito is stunned. He was sure he had reproduced the metronome image correctly. The blade is smooth, but the result is distorted, leaving the boy feeling confused. He realizes that metal is too hard for bending practice. So he switches the knife material to aluminum, soft and pliable. With this metal, everything goes much easier. Raito looks at the knife in his hands again, preparing to bend it in the opposite direction, following the metronome's example. But when he tries to bend it, the blade shatters into a multitude of tiny fragments. Raito panics. His mother will definitely scold him for breaking the blade. He has absolutely no idea how to explain such damage.
But then a solution occurs to him. If shapeshifting works on any object, why not use it right now? Gathering the fragments, the boy pours them into his palm. Using his skill, he watches as tiny pieces of metal begin to twist and intertwine, resembling living creatures. The sight evokes an unpleasant feeling. The process looks terrifying. But he forces himself to continue. Taking the remaining intact piece of the knife, Raito connects it with the fragments, imagining the knife's form or appearance. He carefully opens his palms and sees the restored knife, looking just as it did before. Success fills him with joy. Moreover, the system announces the addition of a new skill, correction. This ability allows him to repair damaged objects. Raito understands, now he can confidently practice on the objects in his room without fear of punishment. Continuing his practice, he goes out into the courtyard and practices on the ground around the mansion, changing the shape of the soil layer. At this point, Aliyah appears, holding a full laundry basket. She's shocked to see the boy outside, as she thought he should be indoors. Raito himself is equally surprised. He smiles and announces that he's feeling fine and can now leave. Aliyah breathes a sigh of relief and prepares to move closer. But Raito panics and tries to stop her. He knows there's evidence of his experiments lurking beneath her feet, and it's best not to step on them. She doesn't have time to react and falls neck deep into the hole. Her underwear scatters everywhere. Raito realizes in horror, this is the same hole created by his training with the earth. But he can't admit it. All he can do is ask if Aliyah is okay, trying to hide the true cause of the accident. Naturally, the maid is furious. She yells at the boy so loudly that her voice carries into the room, where Isla, noticing her son's strangely twisted toys, is horrified. She begins to realize that Raito is actively practicing his abilities. She watches from the window as her son runs away from an enraged Aliyah. This makes her wonder, perhaps too much heaviness has accumulated in the boy's soul. Her anxiety grows. Meanwhile, the days pass, and Raito continues to practice on stones, on an iron fence, for which he receives further reprimands, and on cutlery. 6 months pass like this. Now Raito cautiously creeps down the mansion's hallway toward the locked door. In his hands is a fork, now a familiar training tool. He intensifies his concentration and uses shapeshifting. The metal of the fork instantly yields and takes the shape of a key. Raito smiles contentedly. Not a single lock in this house could resist a boy who has honed his alchemy skills to such a level. The lock gives way quietly, and the door opens smoothly. Beyond it lies a kitchen, cluttered with a multitude of pots, bowls, and cutlery. Metallic gleams everywhere reflect the light. Raito glances around the room, noticing a large kitchen knife lying apart from the rest of the equipment. In the hands of a small child, it looks ominous, like an alien object in the hands of someone who shouldn't yet be old enough to wield a weapon. Having reached the maximum level of his shapeshifting skill, Raito unexpectedly gained a new special ability. During precision training, as he painstakingly attempted to replicate the movement of a metronome, the system revealed hypervibration, an ability that amplifies the vibrations of an object to an incredible level of destructive force. He snuck into the kitchen specifically to test his new ability. Carefully scanning the room, Raito searches for an object that will stand up to the test, and his gaze falls on a wooden chair, a fairly dense material, yet soft enough not to arouse the adult's suspicions. He swings lightly, barely touching the back of the chair. But one touch is enough for the blade to slice right through the wood. The chair literally splits in two, as if it had been cut by a blow from an adult swordsman, not by the casual movement of a child. The chair falls to the floor with a loud thud in surprise. At that moment, Raito notices that the knife has disappeared from his hand. Before he can even comprehend what's happened, the hypervibration device begins to operate on its own. The knife rises into the air, spinning with terrifying speed. This reaction wasn't what he'd planned. The blade nearly grazes the boy, flying past his face, and then falls at his feet, embedded deep in the wooden floor. Even motionless, the knife continues to vibrate, trembling slightly, as if alive. Raito, crawling back, watches in stunned silence as the vibration cuts through the floorboards. Despite his fear, satisfaction flares in the boy's chest. Such power could be useful in a real fight. He carefully picks up the knife, stops it, and puts it back where it belongs, so as not to arouse suspicion.
On the way to his room, he playfully twirls his fork, musing aloud on how versatile his shapeshifting skill has proven. He sees a multitude of possibilities, from combat to picking any lock. The thought of locks gives him a new idea. He recalls the storage room, which he couldn't access because of the strong lock. Alia isn't nearby, and this is the perfect moment. Perhaps that's where the books on magic are hidden, the knowledge he so desperately needs. So Raito, without hesitation, pries the door open with a modified fork and enters, trying to maintain the appearance of absolute politeness, as if he's entered with permission. But as he surveys the room, he realizes he's mistaken. The space looks more like a storage room than a hidden repository of knowledge. There are only a few pieces of furniture and a solitary bookcase. The boy is confused. No ancient manuscripts or magical scrolls. He approaches the only shelf and notices a strange, black, thick-bound book. It's unlike anything he's seen before. He picks it up and something frightening catches his eye. He glances at the rest of the shelves. Every book there is black, as if coated in thick resin. Not a single other color, not a single inscription. The sight gives him goosebumps, as if these tomes contain something forbidden, not intended for ordinary people. Raito's nerves tighten, a sense of unease welling up inside him. He can't make sense of what he's seeing. All the books on the shelves are uniformly black, as if coated in a layer of darkness. He cautiously reaches for one and, overcoming his tension, carefully opens the cover, wary of what he might find inside. A list of names appears on the pages, the neatly written surnames of royal and noble families. The entries stretch out in long columns. But the room is too dark, so the letters blur together. Then Raito notices a lamp in the corner, which can illuminate the pages. He lights it and places it closer, illuminating the table. He opens the book again and decides to look at the other volumes on the shelf. His gaze suddenly catches a short line on one of the pages, cause of death, murder. The boy's heart sank. He checks the next books, and they all contain the same thing. These volumes record the names and circumstances of people's deaths. Raito stood frozen in front of the shelf, unable to comprehend that the contents of all these books were identical. Even more frightening was how detailed the death records were, as if each one had been scrutinized and archived with the utmost care. He tries to figure out if Alia or any of the servants know about these books. Opening a new volume, Raito hopes to see something different. But what he finds terrifies him even more. The double-page spread features two familiar names, his mother's and his own. However, the cause of death section remains blank, like a space waiting to be written. He grabs several other books, comparing the contents. And finally, he understands the gist of what's happening. These volumes are used to list those who are still alive but already under surveillance. When a person becomes an obstacle to the crown, they are eliminated and the entry is updated. The sight of his own name on such a list makes the boy's skin crawl. He quietly closes the book, wipes the cover, and carefully replaces the volume. He checks the hallway, making sure no one saw him come in. Trying not to make any noise, he closes the door, as if he'd never set foot in it. Then he practically runs to his room. There, Iris meets him, as if she'd been expecting this moment. The angel realizes from his state that this is his first encounter with the secret hidden in the black books. Now Raito knows, this is where the records of all the murdered nobles and members of the royal family are kept. He trembles with anxiety, trying to understand why such grim records are kept in this house of all places. After some thought, he comes to the obvious conclusion: the mansion is ideal for storing secrets. It's cut off from the outside world, surrounded by forests and monsters, meaning no one can escape and spread the information. Even if the library is discovered, the person will find themselves trapped, as escaping this isolation without outside help is impossible. The monsters around them make escape a suicide. Raito asks a practical question: how do people even live in such a place if they can't leave? Food, clothing, household items, all are essential. Iris explains that a warehouse is hidden in the basement, regularly replenished with the help of transport mages. The secret logistics route astonishes the boy. He then learns of another aspect: there are aircraft in the world. He arrived here on one. The only way to get to or from the mansion is by air, making the area virtually inaccessible. This thought doesn't please Raito at all. He begins to seriously consider learning to fly on his own. But his thoughts are interrupted by Iris, who recalls the magical effect he used on the kitchen knife.
Angel is amazed by the unusual power, calling super vibration a rare phenomenon. The boy is surprised by her admiration. Iris suggests using this ability in combat by learning to wield a sword. The proposal confuses Raito. He views himself as a support mage, not a fighter, but the offer itself sounds unexpectedly tempting. Angel is confident that with persistence he can become a skilled swordsman. The journey will be long, but the reward could be rewarding. Raito hesitates for a moment and decides to give it a try, hoping it will open up new possibilities. Another 6 months pass, and Raito turns 6. Now he trains daily with a wooden practice sword, trying to replicate the movements Iris described. He swings his sword right in the courtyard, making strange battle sounds that seem like an essential part of the process. But at that moment, Aliyah comes outside and notices that the boy's last cry sounded different than usual. Raito startles, not expecting her appearance, and asks if it's time for breakfast. The answer comes quickly. It turns out the time has indeed come, but Aliyah's expression turns displeased. She's concerned not only that Raito is training without supervision, but also that he's doing it in an increasingly bizarre and risky manner. The reason for Aliyah's displeasure is simple: Raito is covered in sweat, as if he'd been training not for a few minutes, but for the entire morning. She thinks it's necessary to send him to wash up before breakfast. But the boy insists on waiting just a moment longer. He wants to make the final swing. He places a wooden block on a stump and concentrates, as if preparing for an important exam. Raito gathers his strength and delivers a sharp blow. The wooden sword's blade, enhanced by his skill, splits the block in half, triggering the helmet splitting technique, a move he'd recently mastered. He's pleased, seeing that everything went as planned. Aliyah watches him with confusion and slight shock. Her gaze clearly suggests the child is acting too serious for his age, and there's something over the top about his training. They head to the bathroom. While Aliyah washes Raito, gently wiping his skin with a cold, damp sponge, the boy shudders from the sudden cold and cries out in displeasure. The elf notices that her young master is acting very strangely. She's never met a mage so zealously studying swordsmanship. Raito watches her and realizes that she's been acting unusually lately, but now seems to have returned to her usual calm. He sincerely thanks her for making him a wooden sword. Aliyah smiles, pleased that the boy has found her work to his liking. But when Raito tries to continue the conversation and ask her for training, the elf abruptly cuts him off, making it clear she cannot mentor him. She's a mage, not a swordsman, and considers swordsmanship too crude and unsightly for her. So she asks Raito to go to the dining hall. The boy reluctantly agrees and changes into clean clothes, though his mood noticeably plummets. Irritated, he goes to breakfast, still dreaming of a duel that would allow him to test his newfound strength. Aliyah sternly scolds him to stop acting like a man possessed. After eating, Raito returns to his room. Satiety brings satisfaction, especially after an intense morning workout. Left alone, he turns to Iris, wanting to ask her a question. He deliberately plays a little fool in his mind, causing the angel a slight irritation, as if trying to test the boundaries of what's permissible. Iris expresses her displeasure with his behavior too loudly and emotionally, as if it were completely unbecoming of her status. Raito understands that such jokes might be perceived very differently in this world than they were in his past. He's embarrassed by this realization. But Iris quickly calms down and proudly notes that her knowledge spans many worlds, including the one Raito came from. She easily understands his hints, even though the rest of the inhabitants of this world do not. The angel then turns the conversation to his sword training. She sees he's taking this extremely seriously. Raito confirms this, but complains that he can't advance his skills any further. It's as if his progress has stalled. Although he'd already mastered fencing and helmet-splitting techniques, his progress had stalled. Iris agreed, training without a suitable opponent was becoming increasingly difficult. She wondered how to solve this problem. And finally, he offers an alternative: while there's no worthy opponent, they can switch to learning a new skill. This encourages Raito. Their thoughts coincide. He, too, is wondering what he should learn next. He's waiting to see what direction the angel will suggest. It seems Iris has already explored this matter. She believes the time has come to begin learning magic. This news makes the boy's heart literally leap with delight. He's been waiting for this moment for so long. This is truly what he's been striving for all these years. Iris remains convinced he's too young, but she understands that his zeal is now unstoppable. When she tries to explain that they need to wait a little, the boy becomes almost hysterical. He emotionally warns that he'll stop contacting her altogether if she doesn't help him get started right now. Angel notices a childish capriciousness in his behavior. She calms him down by arguing that she won't be able to teach him magic if he sever their connection. The logic in her words is undeniable, and the boy is forced to stop his hysteria, since he has nothing to say in response. Now Iris announces the lesson begins. She fully embraces her role as magic teacher, creating a whole chalkboard in visual diagrams to create the atmosphere, as if she were addressing a real class. Raito is a little taken aback by the angel's playful approach. She even changed her outfit to accentuate her mentor's image. But Iris is clearly in high spirits, and her enthusiasm is contagious. Iris finally begins explaining, noting that Raito's primary role as a support mage is to enhance allies with specialized spells. This profession has 3 key types of special magic, each of which forms the basic structure of a support mage's combat effectiveness. The first type is strengthening the body, the second is strengthening magic, and the third is strengthening recovery. These 3 areas define the support mage's methods of influence on others and themselves. Raito listens attentively, trying to act like a model student. He's genuinely interested in the purpose of each skill and is actively trying to understand the enhancement system. Iris approves of this interest and explains, body enhancement can significantly improve a person's physical attributes, and the strength of the effect depends on the skill level. If a support mage reaches level 5, their physical abilities will be increased 5-fold. This prospect excites Raito, but his enthusiasm quickly turns to concern when he learns of the consequences. After the skill wears off, the body can collapse due to extreme exhaustion. Magic enhancement is used to increase the power of offensive spells, making it indispensable for mages who specialize in combat magic. At its maximum level, this skill increases the power of spells 5-fold. Raito feels the surge again, but it fades when he realizes that his magicka consumption also increases several-fold. Recovery Boost, unlike the first 2 skills, is designed to enhance the body's natural ability to heal wounds, speeding up the process in the long term. Although this recovery method takes longer than direct healing magic, it allows for full restoration of the body. Raito is surprised, as this skill has almost no negative effects. Iris confirms the absence of any serious downsides, but emphasizes that the recovery rate will be slow. She then highlights the key characteristic of a support mage, which sets them apart from other professions. The main strength of this profession is its enormous reserve of magical energy, exceeding that of any other specialization. Raito is shocked by what he hears and doesn't immediately understand why support mages possess such incredible reserves of magicka. Iris compares this reserve to similar ones in games. There are spells that a regular mage simply doesn't have the resources to cast, while a support mage can easily withstand their cost. Meanwhile, most professions spend magicka very wastefully. The boy doesn't know how to react to such a mixture of advantages and limitations. He cautiously inquires about the downside of his vast magic reserves, and Iris moves on to the support mage's most significant weakness. Raito thinks he already has more than enough weaknesses, so he's shocked to discover he has another. Iris reveals a surprising fact: support mages are completely incapable of using bombardment magic. Raito doesn't even know what the term means. The angel explains that bombardment is a type of magic that creates a powerful energy beam, a kind of magical cannon. The boy mentally compares this effect to a firearm capable of piercing opponents from a distance. The combat potential of such a spell is enormous. Even a novice mage can destroy an entire group of weak monsters, for example, a dozen goblins, using just one such shot. But precisely because of its monstrous power, the magicka consumption is so high that the number of uses of this spell is always limited. It is impossible to use it continuously. After this, Iris concludes the lesson. Raito concludes that support mages are completely devoid of offensive magic. Iris thinks for a moment and returns to her normal form. She clarifies that his conclusion isn't entirely correct. Raito has access to more than just support. In addition to his special skills, he can use elemental magic, which is the most basic and simple form of magical influence. This makes the boy doubt its usefulness. Iris agrees with his assumption. Elemental magic is indeed called everyday magic and is considered weak. But even it can become a weapon if used wisely. Realizing everything he'd heard, Raito fell into a despondent state. The lecture had drawn an unpleasant conclusion. Support mages lacked full-fledged offensive magic, and their primary skills were limited to auxiliary functions that weren't always decisive in a fight. Therefore, Raito realizes that he shouldn't expect impressive power from elementary magic. It's intended more for everyday tasks than for serious combat. Iris completely agrees with his conclusion, merely confirming that expectations in this regard should always remain modest. However, the angel adds a note of optimism. Although support magic places a heavy strain on the body, there is a way to reduce this strain. At first, Raito doesn't understand what she means, but after a moment, he mentally grasps the essence of her hint. The answer lies in reinforcement. By applying it to one's own body, one can significantly reduce the negative effects and avoid fatigue after using other skills. This discovery gives Raito confidence. He decides that this is the principle they should base their work on going forward. Despite the profession's weaknesses, support magic seems extremely useful to him. Iris reluctantly agrees, though she reminds him that support mages still lack access to bombardment magic, and that this cannot be changed. Moreover, the angel notes that in this world, support mages are despised far more often than combat mages or swordsmen. Late in the evening, Raito stands by the open window and watches the stars. Despite this, he understands that he has abilities, which means there is still hope for him. He remains determined to master the art of the support mage, no matter the criticism he hears. A firmness that was previously absent appears in his gaze. The next day, another lesson begins in the isolated mansion. Aliyah brings a whole stack of books to Raito, explaining that today they will begin with practicing writing and the alphabet. The boy is 7 years old, and the maid is certain this is a necessary part of his education. Seeing the mountain of books on the table, Raito's enthusiasm suddenly fades. He can write, and does it better than many adults, but Aliyah is adamant, even if the young master's handwriting is superior to her own, he can't skip lessons. The boy almost gets angry, as he'd rather devote time to support magic. But the lesson is scheduled in advance after the alphabet. They'll move on to the 6 races of the world. As soon as Aliyah begins her explanation, Raito interrupts her. He already knows that there are 6 intelligent races in the world. Humans are the largest in number and possess highly developed intelligence. Next come the elves, the longest-lived races and possessing the most powerful magical abilities. Their magic is considered the standard among all races. Third come the beastmen, who combine animal and human traits. Fourth are the giants, known for their enormous and powerful bodies. Demons are distinguished by their diversity of appearance and abilities, as well as their intelligence, comparable to that of humans. And finally, the dwarves are loud, stubborn, but incredibly skilled blacksmiths, capable of creating unique artifacts, holy swords, demonic blades, and other remarkable weapons. Raito recounts all this information without hesitation, which genuinely amazes Aliyah. She is delighted, believing he seems to have memorized the book, although the boy was merely repeating what he had heard earlier from Iris. The elf looks pleased and proud of her student. She's about to move on to the kingdom's history, but Raito only sighs dejectedly. He's bored, and the lessons are taking up time he'd rather spend on his magical training. Nevertheless, the lesson continues. Aliyah explains that the kingdom of Baratoros was founded about 300 years ago. It is considered the largest human state, and among other races, only elves, beastmen, and giants have their own countries. Long ago, a brutal war raged between 6 races, lasting for many years. But the ruler of Baratoros, Raito's ancestor, managed to forge an alliance, uniting the races and ending the bloodshed. This is new information for the boy. Aliyah speaks enthusiastically of how the blood of a great ruler now flows in the veins of his descendant. However, Raito cautiously notes that lineage alone does not make anyone great. Her face expresses genuine horror, as if the boy's words had violated some sacred order.
But Raito indifferently turns the page, adding that his father still doesn't recognize him as part of the royal family.
Aaliyah is embarrassed and confused.
She regretfully apologizes for getting so carried away with the topic. This distracts Raito, and he feels awkward. He didn't mean to upset her. To change the subject, he asks if she knows elementary magic. At first, the elf doesn't understand what magic he's talking about, but then remembers that it's another name for the everyday magic known to everyone.
Raito is eager to see this magic in action with his own eyes.
This time, Aaliyah doesn't object. In her opinion, there's nothing dangerous about everyday magic, and if the young master wants to try it, it's perfectly acceptable. Aaliyah is confident that a demonstration of elementary magic can't cause any harm, so she allows Raito to try it. The boy is filled with anticipation, but the elf insists on starting with a short introductory lesson, and this news pleases him far less than the demonstration itself. She explains that the world's magic is divided into 7 basic elements: fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, holy magic, and darkness.
Each element has its own nature, potential, and area of application. An affinity for a particular element is determined by race or profession.
Humans often interact better with fire, while elves like Aaliyah almost always possess the gift of wind, which explains their superiority in air magic.
The elf also speaks of elemental compatibility.
Their combinations can strengthen or weaken magic, and personal mastery only partially compensates for the weakness of its initial level. This magic is almost never used in combat due to its low power. After confirming that Raito is listening, Aaliyah turns around and sees a look of resignation on his face, as if he's losing his last strength. Nevertheless, he confirms that he understands everything. Now that they've covered the theory, the elf offers to demonstrate the magic in practice, instantly bringing the boy back to life. She's about to demonstrate elementary wind magic, which elves are particularly skilled at. Raito is consumed with curiosity and can't help but recall the moment when Aaliyah saved him from the roof with a powerful gust. But the maid shyly warns, elementary magic is nothing compared to that.
She concentrates, raising her palm.
A stream of power slowly gathers around her hand, forming a small swirling vortex.
This is a wind pressure spell.
A gentle stream of air barely touches Raito's hair, causing it to tremble slightly. He can't hide his surprise, having expected so much more. Aaliyah, overcome with confusion, reminds him that this is only basic magic, and one should rarely expect impressive results from it. The boy, still confused, asks if he's capable of using such magic himself.
Aaliyah pauses. They've never tested his aptitude before. But a simple test would be enough to get at least a rough estimate.
She explains that, despite the general human affinity for fire, sometimes children are born with the gift of wind. Therefore, she invites him to imitate her actions, extend his hand and perform the magic.
Raito complied and mentally clarified the sequence of actions.
Then he cast a wind pressure spell, concentrating the energy in his palm. At that very moment, a system notification appeared. The spell had been mastered. But simultaneously, a powerful vortex of energy erupted from his hand, spiraling and exploding across the room. Furniture overturned, and Aaliyah's skirt flew up, further intensifying the chaos.
Raito is stunned by his own magic.
When the whirlwind subsides, they both stand amidst the ruined room. Aaliyah is the first to emerge from her stupor, trying to comprehend the nature of the power she's witnessed, but the boy begins to defend himself. No one said elemental magic could be so powerful. Moreover, such a performance was comparable to Aaliyah's own power. Now Raito is inspired. He wants to see other elements. Aaliyah tries to continue the lesson and talk about fire magic, but the boy has already disappeared through the door without even hearing her finish. The door slams right in her face, causing her to awkwardly hit her forehead. Raito rushes to find his mother and finds her in her room. Ayla is surprised to see him so early, as classes were supposed to be continuing, but the boy is too excited to take this into account. He begs her to show him basic fire magic, eager to compare their elemental abilities. At first, Ayla doesn't understand why her son is suddenly talking about elementary magic, but upon hearing that it's the topic of the lesson, she calmly agrees. She raises her hand and begins to concentrate her power. Soon, 2 balls of fire flare up in her palm, bright, smooth, and completely controlled.
They dance slowly in the air, moving at her will. Raito watches the flames, mesmerized, filled with genuine admiration. Ayla demonstrates how she can direct the fire, changing its position and gently rotating it around her palm. Afterwards, she invites her son to try summoning a fireball himself. Raito only gets one small burst of fire, but it doesn't diminish his joy. Ayla is amazed. Her child is capable of using rudimentary fire magic, a rarity for someone that age. Ayla can't hide her shock. Her son not only summoned a fireball on his first try, but immediately tried to set it in motion. Her confused surprise only intensifies when the flame in his palm shifts subtly, as if reacting to his intention. This tiny nudge makes Ayla's expression serious and anxious. She clearly realizes that such early control of fire is unusual. Raito thanks her for her time and prepares to leave, not noticing the hint of worry in her gaze. She sends her son off with a gentle gesture, reminding him that he can always come to her for help and that he must study hard. Her gaze, directed at his departing figure, reflects sadness. Ayla is painfully aware the child possesses magic that, at his age, neither his mind nor his body should be able to withstand. She sees in him an unnatural affinity for magic. And this thought pains her. If fate had allowed Raito to be born without a support mage, he might have had a chance to become heir to the throne. The realization of this lost opportunity makes Ayla weep silently. On the roof of the mansion, Raito is training again. 4 fireballs float calmly before him. It seems this is the current limit of his concentration. He's confident that as his skill improves, he'll be able to hold much more, so he's not worried. After visiting his mother and demonstrating fire, Raito returned to Aliyah and learned new spells from her: Earth Elemental, Earth Block, Water Elemental, and Ice Block. Experiments showed that he was best at fire magic. The ice blocks were less stable. He suspected this might be his elemental affinity. Rising to his feet, the boy reminded himself that all that remained was training. He steps back, gains momentum, and leaps from the roof. His face expresses determination and complete confidence in his actions. He's using the wind spell Ayla demonstrated to him in their distant childhood. In the air, it uses wind pressure. The spiral current catches him, making his fall soft and controlled. He lands gently on the ground, knowing the attempt was a complete success. And yet, he understands, if Aliyah or his mother saw such a leap, they would surely faint from terror. So he decides to exercise caution. A lesson on elemental compatibility pops into his head, and he begins to contemplate the fusion of 2 types of elemental magic. If the plan works, he'll have access to a spell beyond the usual capabilities of a support mage. A determined expression crosses his face. The quiet day in the mansion is about to be no longer peaceful. First, he creates 4 fireballs. He then directs wind pressure at them. The spiral of air rises rapidly upward, joining with the flame. The fire flares up brighter, transforming into 4 pillars of fire reaching toward the sky. The fire signals rise so high they seem like beacons. Raito is stunned. He doesn't immediately understand what exactly he's created. The notification window explains everything. He's just mastered the combat skill Blazing Spear, a spell that fuses fire and wind. This implies that elementary magic can indeed be fused to create special techniques. But the boy doubts whether such magic can be considered elementary. In his opinion, such power could seriously injure an opponent. A sudden, sharp pain pierces his head. His legs give way, and he falls to his knees. A spasm leaves him barely conscious. At that moment, a worried Aliyah, who had been searching the courtyard for the young gentleman, finds him. She tries to find out what happened to him, but Raito has already lost consciousness and falls to the ground. He only manages to come to in his own room. There's a basin of water and a rag nearby. They've obviously been trying to revive him. Trying to get up triggers a new wave of pain. His hands instinctively reach for his head. His first instinct is to call out to Iris and ask for an explanation. The angel appears instantly and informs him that the boy has expended too much mana, but he doesn't yet understand what that means. Iris suspects that overindulgence in magic has led to exhaustion. But she also congratulates Raito. He's single-handedly discovered fusion magic, meaning that with persistent training, he can achieve spells comparable in power to a magic cannon.
He agrees, but puts his mind at ease. With his current mana reserves, mastering such a technique would be incredibly difficult.
Angel acknowledges this.
But given the situation, she has a suggestion. She suggests a way to increase mana that Raito doesn't know about.
Leveling up by slaying demonic beasts is one option.
But there's a simpler and safer method. This refers to the skill points that Raito possesses, even though he didn't know they existed.
Iris continues to explain, points can be used to unlock new abilities and improve existing ones.
However, points cannot be returned once spent, and this is important to remember.
Iris suggests using the skill points Raito has been unknowingly accumulating all this time and channeling them into learning a new skill.
She recommends a specific skill that could solve some of his problems right now: recovery boost, an ability that can offset the damage done to the body from excessive mana consumption. If he acquires this skill, the strain on his body will virtually disappear, even if the boy depletes all his mana in one go. For a support mage, this ability will become a vital support, allowing him to train without the risk of losing consciousness. Moreover, the recovery enhancement is unique, meaning its effects will remain with Raito for life. The boy gloomily asks why the angel didn't tell him about such a convenient system earlier. To this, Iris calmly explains that most people, once they learn about such a thing, stop trying, because acquiring skills becomes too easy.
After all the explanations, the angel departs, promising himself a pleasant rest over tea. The skill's effects are immediate, the headache almost disappears.
Raito feels relieved and admires the power of this unique skill. Now he can train as long as he wants, even if his progress is slower. However, he already has too much to do: support magic, synthesis magic, regular spells, fencing.
And time is terribly short.
The first problem is figuring out how to get rid of Aaliyah, who doesn't leave his side for a moment, preventing him from training freely.
He didn't abandon fencing.
On the contrary, he now has a true mentor. 8 years have passed since his birth in this world, and about 6 months ago, Aaliyah revealed her true profession as a swordsman. From that day on, she began training Raito fully in swordsmanship. Their latest training session clearly demonstrates the difference in their experience. Raito tries to use a helmet splitter, but Aaliyah easily moves out of the way, as if anticipating every move. He's defeated again. The elf deftly places her training sword at his throat. She's already won 387 battles out of 387, and this one is no different. Raito sat down on the ground, disappointed. Aaliyah explained that any martial skill makes movements predictable, allowing opponents to easily find the right moment to counterattack.
This leaves the boy vulnerable. But she admits, his progress is impressive.
In her opinion, he's now capable of competing with a novice adventurer, whereas just recently he could barely hold a wooden sword. However, Raito has never heard the word before and has no idea who these adventurers are. In this world, adventurers are people who work with a guild and perform any tasks for a fee, from slaying monsters to gathering medicinal herbs, escorting caravans, and helping around town. He's amazed at how much Aaliyah knows about their activities. She admits that she was one of them in her youth. She once reached C rank, but met her mistress and abandoned her dangerous profession to work as a maid. This is how Raito learns about the adventurer ranking system. The highest rank is S, followed by A, B, C, and down to the lowest, F. Currently, there are only 10 S-rank adventurers in the entire world. Raito whispers a question to Aaliyah, inquiring about their earnings. The elf is slightly disappointed by his priorities, but admits that strong adventurers do earn a lot. However, she warns, the weak don't live long. Such dangerous work often proves their last, and incompetent adventurers are more likely to perish than others. Raito is startled by the reaction, causing the elf to giggle. After training, he returns to his room and picks up his training sword, pondering what he's heard. The idea of free self-development has truly intrigued him. He understands that his habit of working with skills has given him an incredible advantage. In 8 years, he's mastered more than 50 skills, more than 20 of them in the last year alone. This speed seems almost unreal to him. Iris warned him that once he understood the principle, mastering the skills would be easier. But even she hardly expected him to master butchering just by observing a kitchen worker.
His only regret is that he's forbidden from cooking. It's not proper for a young master to appear in the kitchen. So his butchering skill remains useless, he can't use it anyway. As soon as he thinks about it, his stomach makes a loud noise. He goes to the dining room, hoping to find something to eat. The room is empty. He manages to find a few apples. While exploring the room, he notices a hatch in the floor and recalls Iris's story about the basement and the teleportation magic circle hidden somewhere below. Curiosity prompts him to act. He opens the hatch and sees steps leading down. Curiosity overpowers caution. Descending, he discovers numerous bags and boxes, but what catches his eye is a massive, tightly locked door, as if hiding something important. Raito mentally summons Iris, wanting to confirm his suspicions are correct. He describes to the angel the door he found under the dining room, the existence of which he had never even suspected, and tries to find out if she knows anything about its purpose. Iris explains that the room is only technically an armory. Instead of the usual blades and armor, it contains poisons, hidden murder tools, and other means of eliminating people. Raito is perplexed as to why such dangerous items are kept here, until the angel reveals a simple yet dark reason. It turns out that all of this is hidden in the house so that it would be possible to get rid of those members of the royal family whose existence is considered useless or a threat to the throne without any unnecessary difficulties. The boy doesn't want to believe what he's heard. He refuses to accept it, even if the explanation comes from Iris. Angel notices his state, but, realizing there's no point in hiding the truth, decides to continue and reveal the remaining details. She claims that a murderer is living among the mansion's servants. This information comes as a shock to Raito, almost robbing him of his ability to think. Iris clarifies that if the kingdom ever decides that its continued existence is doing more harm than good, the order to eliminate it will be given to the assassin immediately and carried out without hesitation. Raito clings to a single detail, the feminine form of the word for murderer. There's only one female servant in the house. Does that mean? He tries to push the thought away, convincing himself that Alia couldn't be the murderer, that it was just a mistake or a cruel joke. But Iris dispels his last doubts. She claims that Alia's true professions are spirit mage and assassin, hiding her true calling behind a feigned kindness. The angel continues, explaining that the false profession of a swordsman was chosen only so that Raito would believe the maid was safe. Yes, Alia does serve Isla, but she is also a member of the Black Shadow, a secret organization of assassins answering directly to the king. The boy still can't accept what he's heard. Iris warns that Alia could become his enemy in the future, despite her kindness. Angel is confident in her words, knowing that in 2 years the king's first wife will give birth to a son, and the birth of a legitimate heir will deprive Raito of even the slightest right to the throne. When that moment arrives, the order to eliminate him will be a matter of time. The thought fills the boy's heart with despair, as if plunging him into bottomless darkness. Returning to his room, he continues to mentally wrestle with this new knowledge. He still doesn't believe that Alia would raise a hand against him. But even the words of Iris, who never lies, can't be dismissed. Raito understands that if he doesn't do anything, he'll be left counting the days until his own death, even though the danger isn't immediate. The first plans for escape form in his mind. He remembers the barrier stone and the decaying stone, which can provide protection and repel the demonic beasts. If he can obtain them, the journey through the dangerous forest will become a little less frantic. But retrieving these items is nearly impossible. The stones are set deep, and after their escape, the king's men might seek revenge on Isla. Raito is tormented by the question of why he suffered such a fate, and consoles himself with the thought that even surviving to this day can be considered a miracle for a child with a humble profession. He understands that panic won't help. He still has time. Raito isn't going to let himself be killed. At night, in the dim light of the full moon, he dons his traveling clothes and heads for the fence. A fireball illuminates the way as the boy shapeshifts. The skill allows him to bend iron bars and escape the mansion. Over the years of training, he has mastered enough skills to repel demonic beasts, so he intends to explore the forest and prepare a route for his eventual escape. When the fence is far behind him, he takes one last look back, extinguishes the fireball, and activates his night vision. Now the darkness is no longer an obstacle. A dense forest, full of hidden dangers, opens up before him.
He then employs silent steps, which minimize the noise of his movements, and stealth, which minimizes his presence. These skills make him nearly invisible in the night forest. The boy allows himself a moment of inspiration, contemplating how he'd love to supplement all this with a presence detection skill.
But right now, something else is more important.
He activates his jump, boosting his leg strength, and with one leap, he leaps up to a high tree branch. He finds it amusing that the jumping skill he learned to escape from Aliyah herself is now helping him prepare for his own escape. But his thoughts are interrupted by a treacherous, slipping step, and Raito feels himself losing his balance and ready to fall. But at the last moment, he manages to create a block of ice beneath him, turning it into a makeshift platform, allowing him to avoid falling and reclimb onto the branch. Catching his breath, he notices something moving below, causing him to focus. The first monster emerges from the bushes, a goblin wielding a crude club. For Raito, this becomes a favorable opportunity to test his skills in a real fight. He creates a block of ice and, using alchemy, fashions it into a perfectly balanced weapon suitable for close combat. The resulting blade is a true ice sword, strong and sharp thanks to the combined skills of support magic and alchemy. Taking a fighting stance, he prepares to strike suddenly. While the goblin doesn't notice the danger, he must attack first. Raito leaps from above, using Helmet Splitter, and only then does the monster realize the approaching threat, desperately raising his club. But the ice blade already reaches its target. The goblin is literally cut in half by a clean, heavy blow, like an ordinary log. Blood splashes on Raito's face, even the monster's club is cut along with him, so sharp is the conjured sword. The goblin's body collapses to the ground. The boy breathes heavily, realizing he's encountered a true demonic creature for the first time. An unpleasant chill runs down his spine, but it doesn't stop him from holding his weapon confidently. A sudden noise behind him makes Raito turn around. 3 goblins had been hiding in the bushes, and now they all look at him with aggression. He raises his sword, ready to repel the attack. One of them notices the body of a fallen kinsman and raises a cry of alarm. The others respond, surrounding the boy. Raito quickly assesses the situation and realizes that this battle will be far more difficult than the first. He recalls Iris's warnings: if danger threatens, he must run or call her immediately. But now there's no turning back. He'll have to fight, otherwise escaping the mansion will remain a dream. Clutching the sword in one hand, he forms a second blade of ice with the other. A resolve wells up within him: he will not let these creatures end his life now. A goblin lunges at him from behind. Raito activates his jump, leaps upward, and dodges, then appears directly in front of another enemy, launching an attack. The first blow hits home, another goblin is cut in half. The battle grows increasingly fierce. Raito instantly spins around, using a throw. A perfectly timed ice sword pierces the second monster's head. It falls without a sound. He feels a strange sense of emptiness, remembering that this move belongs to his training with Aliyah. At that moment, the third goblin is already leaping at him, and Raito barely notices the attack. Without thinking, he activates his physical enhancement and sends the monster flying with a powerful kick, even though he knows it's not enough to win. Shifting to magic, he summons 2 fireballs and a wind blast. The flames combine with the spiral of air to form a flaming spear that pierces the goblin and turns him into a torch. He shields himself from the heat with his hand. Only a scorched mark remains on the ground. The battle is won, and the realization brings Raito a bittersweet relief. He senses a level increase and new skill points. A description of another ability, storage magic, appears in the status window. It allows him to store objects weighing up to 50 kilograms in a pocket dimension, though liquids and living creatures cannot be stored there. A dark space, resembling a miniature hole, appears nearby. Raito experiments by dropping a small stone into it. The system records the contents of the vault, and to retrieve it, simply reach into the portal. He finds this magic extremely useful. He calls out to Iris, and the angel responds instantly. She notes that he handled it admirably for his first real battle, and his confidence has noticeably increased. But there are still 2 whole years until he can escape the mansion. So he must work hard and become even stronger. Finally, Raito rises and decides that this is enough for the first day. The next night, he will continue training. Morning at the mansion dawns as usual. The boy is too sleepy to study properly.
And Alia doesn't understand why.
The day passes quickly, giving way to another night.
Today, Raito is hunting again. This time, his prey is a horned rabbit. This demonic beast quickly escapes him. But the boy still finds it. Although the creature looks cute, Raito, unfortunately, can't let it go.
Suddenly, he stumbles and nearly falls. But he manages to push off with one of his feet.
And suddenly, he accelerates.
In the process, Raito tries to strike the rabbit with his sword.
And it seems he succeeds.
But he still falls and crashes into a tree.
It's quite painful.
But he's learned a special skill, quick step.
Raito even thanks the horned rabbit for this.
The boy uses his butchering skill on the carcass.
He remembers that crushed horn is the main ingredient in a potion for exhaustion.
So he hides it in storage. And then he takes out a frying pan. And despite the danger of starting fires in the forest, Raito does it. There's a skill he wants to master at all costs, and so he's willing to take the risk.
Rabbit meat sizzles in the pan.
According to the adventurers, the horned rabbit is delicious.
Raito tries what he's prepared. And the flavor is truly excellent.
He thanks her for the food, out of habit from the previous world. But Raito had completely forgotten his cooking skills and simply ate the meat.
It looks like he'll have to try again. But the boy can't. A wolf-like beast attacks.
Raito dodges just in time, but the situation is dangerous. A whole pack of kobolds came for him. It looks like starting a fire really was a bad idea. Kobolds are usually higher level than goblins, meaning it's time for him to get out of here. The boy uses fireballs as a distraction.
They hit the kobolds straight, startling them. It's a chance. But even engulfed in flames, the kobolds don't stop.
They rush after Raito, who is frightened by this development. The fireballs had no effect at all.
Perhaps they weren't strong enough. But there's plan B. His ice sword.
But one of the kobolds catches the blade in its mouth and easily shatters it into pieces. Now Raito is truly scared. He can't believe his sword was destroyed so easily. The kobold swipes at him with its paw, but the boy dodges.
He's about to use flame spear. But the monsters aren't giving him any time. All he can do is keep dodging.
Raito uses wind pressure.
This distracts the kobolds.
The enemies don't give them a chance to use fusion magic, all their energy is spent maintaining distance. Raito wonders if the fireballs were more powerful. And he remembers something. After all, he has a professional skill called magical enhancement. With him, there should be enough firepower. Raito attacks with fireballs again.
This time, there's real damage.
But he's too quick to celebrate.
The kobold manages to hit the boy, too.
Raito is thrown back, falling to the ground.
He's disoriented.
His strength wasn't enough to finish off the monsters.
And now they're closing in.
2 kobolds immediately set their sights on the prone child. All he can do is stare at them in horror.